Today's devotion will be looking at the topic, a painful cycle. I repeat, a painful cycle. 1 Samuel chapter 8, and I read verse 1 and then verse 3. Now it came to pass, when Samuel was old, that he made his sons judges over Israel. Verse 3. But his sons did not walk in his ways. They turned aside after dishonest gains, took bribes, and perverted justice. I read again, 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 1 and verse 3. Now it came to pass, when Samuel was old, that he made his sons judges over Israel. But his sons did not walk in his ways. They turned aside after dishonest gain, took bribes, and perverted justice. The devotion. There is a painful and vicious cycle that I am not sure how to resolve it. I'm talking about the pandemic of children from godly families who walk away from their godly heritage. This really has become a growing epidemic, spreading across Christian families, and it has left behind a trail of woes, pains, and heartbreaks. We observe again and again children from godly families choosing to walk away from the values and commitments of their parents, despite all the good efforts their parents put into parenting. I sometimes hear people put the blame on parents, and we sometimes leave parents with this unreasonable guilt, as though it was their fault. I repeat, we sometimes observe again and again children from godly families choosing to walk away from the values and commitments of their parents, despite, underline that, all the good efforts their parents put into parenting. I sometimes hear people put the blame on parents, and we sometimes leave parents with this unreasonable guilt, as though it was their fault that their children did not turn out right. Of course, there are parents who have made mistakes in parenting, and this could have been responsible for their children choosing to walk away from Christ. But there are parents who have done everything correct and walked in all the revealed precepts of godly parenting, and yet their children still rejected God. Today's devotion is not going to give us a prescription on how to raise godly children. There are dozens of books on that subject. Today's devotion is simply meant to raise the alarm of this pandemic and call our hearts to the place of prayer. Samuel, for example, was a godly leader. We saw in the last devotion how he built an altar in Ramah because he wanted to be close to his family, and how he always returned home after his ministry travels. Unlike his predecessor, God never said anything about Samuel not raising up his children properly. And yet, even though he handed over his ministry to them, it was clear that they were just as corrupt as the children of Eli. This must have broken Samuel's heart. Three things, however, I want us to take away from this as burdens for prayer. The first is that Satan is out to destroy our children, and we need to wage the good warfare for their salvation and victory. We need to recognize that there is a big contention on the lives of young folks, and we cannot imagine the danger they're in. But we must arise to fight for them. Secondly, We need to have hope and faith that our children will not become casualties like many others around us. While there are so many bad examples of Christian kids who have walked away from the faith, there are also many good examples of children who remained and followed the spiritual pathway laid down by their parents. Thirdly, speak up and get involved. When you see seeds of unrighteousness being sown into the lives of young people around you, don't be silent. Whether they're your kids or not, speak up. You may be the answer to someone else's prayers if you speak up. Silence is a killer, and Satan loves us to leave kids alone to fight with him. Praise the name of the Lord. Now, I would like to go a bit deeper just in expounding on the topic. For those who just joined us, the topic is a painful cycle. A painful cycle, and that's looking at the case study of Samuel. 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 1 and verse 3. Now, we see that there is a vicious cycle, a vicious but painful cycle, as we observe children from godly families who walk away. They just walk away from the faith. I'm coming from a trip in Malaysia, and I was sitting with a young man, who is from a very godly family. I know the parents. Very godly family. Godly. The father and mother are national and international ministers. They run an amazing ministry. And this young man, he's walking in the footsteps of his parents, following their precepts, very godly, very righteous, just the kind of example you would love to see your child become. And yet the elder brother totally rejected the Christian faith, totally rejected God, walked away from everything. And so as I had lunch with him one day, I told him, teach me what I want to learn from you. What is it that you think your parents got right with you? And what is it you think your parents got wrong with your brother? Because I was genuinely disturbed. Genuinely. I said, how come one child turns out so godly and righteous and, just very sharp, and yet another one totally, not that he's, walking away from Christianity and doesn't believe in God, totally reject the, So I said, what do you think your parents could have done different? I want to learn as also a father. I want to learn how will you advise me? I told him, your father is my friend and you are like my son to me. But tell me, what do you think I need to learn? And what this boy said really struck home. He said that the elder brother was the one they all looked up to. The elder brother was the first one to become born again. The elder brother was on fire for the gospel. In fact, he was like a model to him and his other sister. They saw him as this, powerful young man, loving the Bible, loving scriptures, walking with God, and they imitated him and began to follow the Lord. But at some point, the young man got into university and just turned totally 180 degrees, just dropped everything, walked away from everything. He said there's nothing his parents did not do to try to bring him back. He says, but this brother just could not come back until today. The young man I'm talking to is married, and the elder brother this young man is in his 30s, the elder brother is in his 40s. So he said to me, there's nothing the parents did wrong. Just like the parents taught him, the elder brother, and the elder brother came to faith and became a powerful example to the younger ones. That is the same principle that they, as younger ones, have walked in. Because I was trying to find out, could there be something the parents did wrong? And you see, I say it with a lot of fear in my heart that parents usually are given the blame. You see, when you hear that, this child is not turning out right, or this child has become wayward, or this child has left the Christian faith, we put the blame immediately on the parents. And like I said in the devotion, yes, sometimes the parents are to be blamed. Sometimes. Sometimes it could be that the parents did not do what they should do. Like we looked at in the last devotion, some parents don't invest time in the children. Some parents are so busy in life and ministry and work that they don't invest into their families. Yes, sometimes the fault is the fault of the parents. But it is so unfair to always put the blame on parents because we don't know the kind of struggle parents have gone through. We don't know the kind of pain parents have gone through. We don't know the kind of effort many godly parents have put into raising their children. And yet, for some reason, those children did not turn out right. And so I want to say that please, when you see a child who is not turning out right, don't be quick to blame the parents because you don't know the history. You don't know what's been happening in the family. You don't know how much effort those parents have put into the lives of those children. You don't know what has gone on in secret. So don't do that. Don't carry those stones and throw the stones at parents as though you were better off. Don't do that because there are many. Somebody was just speaking to me a few days ago how he was sitting with someone, and this man, with his son, and someone else were having lunch together, and this other man was just sharing the woes and the woes of his children and the pain, of watching his children walk away from everything righteous and godly. And when the lunch was over, the adult son of my friend, turned to him and said, "Dad, something like, is that how if I walked away from everything that you ever taught me, how would you deal with it?" And the father said, "I will still love you. Even if you become a communist, even if you hate God, even if you became a gay or homosexual, I will not stop loving you." It is hard, but that's the reality. Many parents have watched their children turn away from the Christian faith, and they are forced under godly direction to continue to love these children. Just like our Father in heaven watches us many times depart from the things he has taught us, and yet he continues to love us. He continues to watch out for us. He continues to support us. It's hard. Samuel must have gone through a lot of pain. Because Samuel, actually, when he became old, the Bible says it came to pass when Samuel was old. A time will come when you are old and you look behind you and you want your children to follow your precepts. You want your children to follow your pathway. And you think you have done everything to prepare them to walk as you did. And yet the Bible says they turned aside. You see, it's not the parents' fault. He says his sons did not walk in his ways, they turned aside. And today I want to say that there are many children who are turning aside, who are not walking in the ways of their parents. They are turning aside. And I want us to pray that God will arise for our children. Whether you have biological children or spiritual children, whether you have children that are young or children that are old, whether you have children who are walking with the Lord or you have children who have become wayward, we need to pray for our children. I really believe this is a follow-up from the last devotion that God is saying, we cannot turn our eyes away from this epidemic, from this pandemic. We cannot turn our eyes away. And as the last days draw nearer, actually, the evil that is sucking in the young will only increase, will only multiply. With the advancement of technology and with globalization, our children become more and more an endangered species. And listen to me, if you're somebody who is young here, know that you are an endangered species. And if you're unmarried, start praying and saying, God, I begin to speak into the future of my children as well, because they will grow up as a greater endangered species. And that's why I ended up in the devotion. I talked about three things. One is the understanding that there is a warfare, and we must engage in this warfare to snatch our children away from the hands of the enemy, to preserve our children so that they do not fall away. There is a warfare that we must engage. We must be engaged in this. The second thing we said is that we must have faith and hope, because while there are bad examples, we are also surrounded with good examples. And sometimes we need to talk about that as well. Like I said, having lunch with that young man, he was a good example, straight as an arrow, married in a young age, having a good home, involved in work and ministry. So there are good examples. We must not lose hope. In fact, some of those who are falling away later on return again, and we praise God for that. So this young man, after we spoke together, he told me that he really believes his brother will come back to faith. So let's have faith and hope. Let's not make it look like, it's done and it's over. And then number three is speak up. Speak up, don't be silent. Sometimes in the name of wanting to be close to your children and become their friends and so on and so forth, we see wrongdoing or evil and we refuse to call a spade a spade. How you do it may be different, but please, silence is not an option. Satan wants us to be silent, and if you have children who have warned you, don't talk to me, don't come close to me, don't get involved in my life, leave me alone. It's hard to speak into such situations. But pray that even if you cannot speak into their situation, God will raise someone who can speak into their situation, while you may speak into the situation of another young person somewhere else. But don't be silent. Don't be silent. I mean, I'm a Nigerian, and some of our children who study abroad in the West, like in Europe and in America, they are exposed to things that they are not ready for. They're exposed to all kinds of evil. One of the parents that's a friend of mine was telling me how, the son who goes to a Christian university, in the US, how even in the Christian university, girls are coming up to him and say, come and sleep with me. Come and let's share a room together. Let's leave the campus and go and stay in town. And, it's just crazy. And so these children who are put in a vulnerable situation, some of them make it, some of them don't. But it's not whether you're in America or you're in Nigeria or you're in Asia or you're in Europe. The contention is real. The battle is real. The enemy is out to get the young people. And it did not start today. It started way back in the Old Testament. And you can see Eli did not raise his children well. And we can say, okay, maybe the problem was Eli had a problem with parenting. But Samuel, how did Samuel's kids miss it? How? Did Samuel do something wrong? I don't think so. And the Bible doesn't say anything about those children coming back to faith. So there is a battle and we must engage. So pray for yourself, pray for your children, pray for the young generation, speak up. Because the only way the gospel of Jesus will continue from generation to generation is if we don't lose our young people. And the fight is to keep these young people. The fight is to preserve these young people. We must not turn our hearts away. One of the most important ministries in church is the ministry to reach out to young people, to model and to bring them up. My daughter, who is in her 20s, and she doesn't live with us, she lives far away and in another country, but she's joined another church, and she's finding fulfillment. sharing with me how their church is on a 21-day fast right now, from morning till 5 a.m. They don't eat anything, and she's so excited sharing the stories, how they have online devotions and how, and she's so excited. And I'm excited for her. And so one of the prayers we need to pray is that our children will plug into the right Christian communities where they can find their nourishment. They don't have to go to the same church you went to. They don't have to do things exactly the way we did it. But we are praying that they will find their own water to swim in. They will find a community that speaks their own language. So I see my daughter begin to enjoy having her devotions. She's looking forward to go to church. She's part of an activity group in church. I am surprised by this new excitement, but it's God leading her into that community where she finds fulfillment. And so part of our prayer is that our children will connect with the right people. Sometimes parents may not be the ones that God will use to help those children. God will need to raise other people to do this. I have so much to say on this topic, but I don't want to write a book on this. There's so many books written on how to raise godly children. But I'm simply raising the alarm that we cannot be silent, that our children are an endangered species, that there is a battle we need to fight. And we must not put the blame on parents all the time, as though parents are responsible for their children not walking the ways of Christ. Sometimes, yes, there is a failure of parenting, but many times it's just that the enemy is at work to steal and to kill and to destroy. Would you want to join me in this last few minutes to just pray? The first prayer is, Lord, deliver the children from Christian homes. Deliver the children from this epidemic. Deliver our young people from the host of hell that is seeking to destroy them. Deliver our children, oh God. Will you join me in this cry? A global cry.